So what is our goal? Our goal is to celebrate and to immerse ourselves in new learning and learn from one another in the spirit of living in community. It's also constructive feedback. And so what we're doing is we're providing multiple ways for our presenters to receive feedback. So we're excited to do that. And so what we will do is I will now turn this over to a wonderful presenter, and we're going to have Sylvia go first. So what we'll do is I will turn this over to Linda, who is going to be making the presentation. And then after Linda makes the introduction, what I will do is I will turn the spotlight on for Sylvia so that everyone can focus there. So welcome, Linda. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Many of you want to have seats at the table, especially if you consider yourselves underrepresented in your organizations. Your tables may be anywhere, no matter how high in the hierarchy or organizational chart they're set. Yet, once you sit at a place setting, how do you show up? Getting to the table is one thing. Practicing the unwritten rules that etiquette coaches don't tell you is what determines how you're seen, how you're heard, and even how you can make a difference. Our speaker, Sylvia Henderson, co-founder of Mind Team Solutions Incorporated, will share her story of learning some of these unwritten yet vital rules. As a strategic change expert with an MBA and over 40 years of organizational and leadership experience, she's compiled quite an extensive guidebook. She'll share some of her table etiquette with us so that we can make the contributions in our lives we know we can make when we're at tables in the rooms where legacies happen. Please welcome Sylvia Henderson.
So it's 1982. I'm walking into the training conference room at IBM, and I'm feeling pumped. See, I'm in my 30s, stop counting, but I look like I'm 17. And around the table are fellow instructors who are male, in their 40s, and white. My manager is standing in front of the room at the whiteboard with a marker in his hand, and he's leading the discussion. What we're doing that day is we're supposed to be solving a problem that we're having in the training center. Now, this training center is where guys, mostly at that time, from all over the country, come and learn how to fix IBM equipment. So the problem that he's sharing with us that day is that in our lab where the learning takes place, the equipment parts are being broken at an extraordinary rate. And he's asking us, hey guys, how do we stem the costs that this is causing us? And so the ideas start to fly around the room. Let's stockpile extra parts so that we have them when we need them. Let's negotiate with the part centers so we can get lower prices. Let's give them a quiz before they go into the lab. And the ideas are flying. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, gosh, some of these are harebrained ideas, but I've got something that I'm thinking about. Finally, I raise my hand and Richard looks at me and he says, Sylvia, what you got? So I say, I know I'm kind of new here and I'm not quite sure, but I think that if we demonstrate the repair procedure before they actually use the equipment, maybe we can save some money on the broken parts. Do you think? Well, Richard says, that's an interesting idea. And then he lets the conversation keep going. And the ideas start flowing, keep flowing. And finally, Bob, sitting 2 seats away from me, suddenly blurts out, let's show them before we fix them. And everybody goes, yeah, that's it. Let's do it. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm dumbfounded. I'm like, WTF? This is before WTF was a thing. Didn't I just say that?
Mm.
What am I, chopped liver? Well, the first time this happens, okay, but it keeps happening. And I start questioning, why doesn't anybody hear my ideas? Why aren't they taking action on my ideas? Am I invisible? And the more this kept happening, the more I'm thinking, why am I here?
Mm.
I'm feeling invisible. I'm feeling unheard. And I'm asking myself, is it me? Is it because I'm young? Is it because I'm Black or a woman? Well, the more this happens, the more I'm close to tears because I'm trying to figure out how to survive here. I'm feeling really, really unheard and really inconsequential and sort of, what do they call it? Imposter syndrome. Finally, after so long this happening, I decide I've got to get some clarity. And so I check in with my mentor that I had, Roger. And Roger was in his 40s, a white guy, another manager, not mine. But he'd been real straightforward with me, real with me in prior conversations. So I thought, let me get his opinion. So I knock on his door. He beckons me in and I sit down in front of him, across from his desk. And I start to share with him what I'm feeling and what's happening in meetings. And he can tell my energy level is kind of low, unusual for me. So he says, Sylvia, what's up? And I tell him how I'm feeling and I tell him what's happening in meetings. Is it me or is it something else? Is it, do I need to change or is this the way things are going to be around here? What do I need to do? I've got to survive in these meetings and I'm worried about my career. So what should I do? And I start shifting around in the chair because I'm a little nervous about what he's going to tell me. And tears are starting to well up in my eyes, but I'm not going to cry in front of this guy, not going to show weakness. So Roger kind of sits back, and he thinks about it for a couple minutes. Then he leans forward and he says, looks me in the eye and he says, Sylvia, I know that you know more than most everybody else in that room. I know you've worked twice as hard to get to where you are. I've seen you study up on the technical information that you teach. So I think it's less about you personally, and it's more about how you communicate your ideas in the meetings. So here's my challenge to you. First of all, stop raising your hands for permission to speak. Second, stop prefacing what you have to say with conditions and with backstory. I want you to lean forward at the table and command the table. I want you to say what you have to say clearly, succinctly, and confidently. And I want you to end with, so how do we make this happen? Whoa, okay. So I'm absorbing some of this. And I leave his office kind of getting that in my head. And a couple days later, we have another meeting. Typical department meeting. There's an issue we need to solve. The ideas start flowing. And with Roger's words in my head, I lean forward at the table, elbows on the table. I'm sorry, Mom, you taught me to be a little more polite than that. But lean on the table to capture their attention. And I find my moment. And I just say my idea clearly, succinctly, and confidently. Then I sit back a little bit and I say, hey guys, how do we make this happen? Well, they got quiet. They looked at me. Then they looked at Richard to see his reaction. And Richard's standing there in front with that grin on his face. And he says, Sylvia, that is a good idea. Okay, guys, how do we make it work? Whoa! He called my name. He recognized that it was my idea, and they're actually going to act on it. Woo! I'll tell you, that moment made a difference for me from that day forward. I came into meetings and I felt heard, not only by my peers, but by higher ups in the organization. I felt respected. And in fact, people came to me after meetings to ask for my opinion and for my thoughts. And I got really comfortable butting in and even interrupting conversations when it didn't look like there was going to be a break for me to say something. I am confident that learning how to speak up and speak out at meetings that day propelled the trajectory of my career at IBM as I moved up the corporate ladder into leadership and management positions. So circling back to when I said I loved my job, now I love that I get to dedicate my career and my business to helping people realize the transformative experiences that I realized that day and many more. You see, I am passionate about creating cultures in organizations where leaders communicate and they leverage relationships that drive their personal and professional success for themselves and their companies. Because that's how change happens, with relationships and honest conversation and diversity of thought and of voices in the world. Don't you think that too? I hope you do, because if you do, let's have a conversation. Connect with me here today and let's talk.
Way to go. So everyone, take your moment and just in private while you're muted, take a moment to jot down your own thoughts and your own takeaways. Thank you, Sylvia, so much for sharing your magic. And you all just take a moment. All right. How do you feel, Sylvia?
Relieved that it's over, but it felt good. And I know the places that I skipped, but you know, it doesn't matter. You didn't know it. So it feels good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So we are so grateful for you, Sylvia. And don't forget that in the chat room or in the chat, there is a text file that Sylvia is requesting that you all download, either to simply use the questions as your prompts in your breakout rooms in just a moment, or to download the file, type in your responses, and then you'll see her email is in the text file, and then you can simply email directly to her, and then we'll go through the rest of our facilitated process. So thank you again, Sylvia, and now we will go into breakout rooms.
And can
yes, go ahead.
Can I add one little thing? The
Yes.
reason for the questions in that, for the feedback is that developing the story and using it, I don't normally keynote the way we think of keynoters. Mm-hmm. I am more a training and an educational presenter. So this has been a challenge developing the story, but I really want to know how to turn that story into more of a messaging for keynoting or for training purposes later. So that's why I was really specific with my questions. So go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So I see a couple of you saying in chat that you're not able to download the text file, which is an individual Zoom opportunity for people. So what we'll do is Georgia will copy the text file and she'll paste it into the chat so everybody can see that. And then what we will do is in just a moment, Georgia will launch small breakout rooms. The goal of these breakout rooms is for you all to have a chance just in your small groups to process what you heard. And then as you are having those discussions, the concept is that it'll allow you to kind of percolate to the top. What are the feedback opportunities that you want to share with Sylvia? So when you all come back from the breakout rooms, you'll be able to then in an open forum give feedback and we'll verbally share that. But also do not feel that you have to share something verbally out loud. The other is to simply privately chat message Sylvia directly, or you can use the text file.
Yeah.
We're all so quiet today, aren't we?
Yes.
There he is.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
talked about
Serious business.
I just talked about getting your voice out. Now everybody's quiet.
Yes. So welcome back, everyone. So glad to have you. And now what we want to do is you can either use the text file that Sylvia provided, or you can send her a private chat message right now. And then what we want to do now is open it up for discussion. And what I'd like to invite you to do is go to the reactions button at the bottom of your toolbar in Zoom, click on reactions. And then if you would, just click on raise your hand. And then I'll just call on you. And that way we can do this as efficiently and get as many people as possible that want to share. So click on raise your hand and then I'll call you out.
I don't have raise your hand, so I gave you a thumbs up.
So yeah, I can
Okay.
see it.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sure. Our group talked about how we really like the story and of course the powerful approach that Sylvia's presence and her voice. The story felt a little long and we felt like it was hard to kind of understand the thesis of what you were going to be talking about. My suggestion was it might be helpful to kind of set up the story with some disempowerment, then give us a thesis about here's what I'm here to talk with you about, then finish the story and tell us how it worked out and give us the rest of the information. One of us felt like the thesis kind of wasn't broad enough. I was kind of unclear on where kind of what the thesis statement was for what you were doing. I'm a stickler for that, so that's of particular import to me. But looking at that, that's the place where we thought it could use the most improvement. At the same time, very strong speaking voice, great style, great all around. Those are our recommendations for if you're going to do the speech again, that would be what we would recommend.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. And how about Tanya?
Sylvia, I'm a big fan. I think you are fantastic. I loved your story and I didn't know where it was going, which I kind of loved. That to me, I was like, oh, good. I loved what it was about. I do think it can apply to both men and women. I think all of us have had that, like, nobody hears me. So maybe even start with a couple qualifying questions. Have you ever felt like you haven't been heard, or, you know, something to kind of draw people in, like, oh yeah, I've gone through that. What is she going to say? So, but I think you are powerful. You've got a beautiful presence. I love your voice and I love your style.
Thanks.
Great, Carol Boston.
Hey, Sylvia.
Yo, Carol.
Your speaking coach was in our things, so I'm going to speak up. I don't know if she was going to. A couple of things that we had was for you to get us engaged earlier on with a question, and especially at the end when you said, don't you agree, as opposed to saying, don't you agree, which puts somebody in a yes or no and doesn't really engage them. You could even raise your hand and say, who agrees with me? And get people to raise their hand. You're going to change their state, as opposed to them just sitting there. And it allows you to also span the room and get a feel for the temperature in the room, right? Because you don't want to be the thermometer in the room. You want to be the thermostat, right? You want to set the temperature in the room. So a question early on also, when you said, why am I here? Has anybody else ever felt that way?
Oh, I hear the
a powerful pause. And then once again, raise your hand when you do it. When you're talking about keynoting these days, at least in my experience, it's a lot less monologue than it used to be and more of a dialogue because people are so used to Zoom and having engagement. And when you can get them to raise their hand with you and get them nodding in agreement with you, that also changes their state and puts them more in alignment with what your message is.
Thank you, Carol. So we've got about 90 seconds more, so we're going to have JD share and then Robin. So go ahead, JD.
I had the honor of having the speaker in my breakout room, which was somewhere between strategically planned and luck of the draw. I'm not sure what exactly, but a couple of things for me. It was classic hero's journey type of presentation. I mean, she rose above the situation. She mastered her environment. She stood and delivered. And I made a suggestion toward the end of the session that it's a great story. It's a true story. It's a believable story. And it's a very common story. And I'd like to see her take us down a little bit more to the depths and get into some of that meta talk that she was experiencing. Like, right before she was ready to speak, what was going through her mind? Did she think she was going to be able to handle it? Would she be judged? Would she be, how would people respond to her? So I'd like to hear a little bit more of that, which makes the payoff even more powerful.
Got it. Thank you, JD. Robin.
I love all the suggestions already. Those are really great. I think it was a wonderful story, very apropos, a lot of application and mentorship. I love the mentorship part a lot, and for women's group. The one thing I would add that no one's brought up so far is I would love for you to play with the voice of the different people and to really make the people come alive in one of those characters and create a character for old Sylvia versus new Sylvia. And so the one thing that I missed is when you were talking about, when you said that one statement that everybody ignored, that needs to have a little bit more breath around it. And what could bring it that breath is to create a character that is the old Sylvia and really take your time with it so I can hear what that statement is and think, oh, is it a good idea? Oh, it is a good idea. Cool. I kind of lost that statement. And so then when the new Sylvia says what she says, given the mentor, then you could really empower it with who you are now.
Okay, that's good.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you all very much. Sylvia, do you have any final thoughts to share with the group?
Just thank you. You have no idea how long it took to work on that. So, but that's my speaking challenge for this year. So thank you. I'm going to absorb all that and move forward. And let's hear the brilliance of our next speaker. Because now I'm comfortable.